Hi, welcome back. In the previous session, we discussed and we uh, installed Postgres software. Basically, we installed Postgres uh, 14 uh, in one of the folder. So if you go here, basically I given this as the folder. I installed the Postgres 14 over here, and here is the bin directory where all the tools which we are going to create the cluster, initiate the start the cluster, and then connect to the database. All these tools exist over here. So what we will do is today we are going to create the now the installation is completed. This is done. So second, we are going to create the cluster. So for this, we are going to use a tool called initdb.exe, which exists in the bin folder. Then once the cluster is created, using pgCTL.exe, we are going to start or stop the cluster. So using this pgCTL, so PG stands for Postgres, CTL stands for control. So Postgres control utility is used to start and stop the cluster. Also, you can check the status of the cluster. Once the cluster is started, we are going to create the database. So we can connect to the database, connect to the cluster. So to connect to the cluster, you can use a GUI based tool called pgAdmin, or you can use a command line tool called pSQL. So we are going to I'm going to show you the demo of all this, so you can practice. Once this demo is completed, you can practice this at your system. So let's get into the demo. So we have created the cluster in this location. We'll open the command prompt. So try to run as an administrator. So once the command prompt is ready, you navigate to the folder where you installed Postgres, cd change directory to bin. So the same thing what you are seeing in the GUI, you are seeing over here. So now, one more thing to discuss over here is, let's say right now this is our system. Let's say this is our system, and in this system, what we did is, under a directory we installed pg14. Once the installation is completed, we are going to create the cluster. So now that this is completed, so we are going to create a cluster. Under cluster, you can create any number of clusters, like cluster 0, cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 03. So you can create any number of clusters. So in Oracle, what happens is cluster is nothing but cluster stands for high availability, where you have like real application clusters. They call it as real application clusters. There you have two node rack and all those stuff. But in Postgres, cluster is nothing but group of databases. So here you will not get the concept of cluster compared to other databases like Oracle, where the high availability is the like synonym for cluster. Here cluster stands for a group of databases. Under a cluster you can create any number of databases, db1, db2, db3. So similarly db1, db2, db3. So here also the same thing. So you can create any number of clusters in a given node. Let's say our node is node 1, and you can create any number of clusters on node 1, and inside each cluster you can create any number of databases. So we will follow these 4 steps what we discussed previously. Let's move to the command prompt. So here in the bin directory, so you are seeing whatever you are seeing here in the command prompt, I am seeing the same thing over here. If you see, here is initdb. Using initdb we are going to create the cluster. So creating the cluster and all, we are going to use the command prompt to do that. So init and press tab, initdb.exe. So we need to pass on the information like where you are going to create a cluster. So as I told, I'm going to create a folder called cluster01. So this is an empty folder here. You can see that I'm going to create the cluster in the cluster01 directory. So to pass the cluster path, I have to give -d, capital D. Capital D stands for cluster, and in Postgres, small d stands for database. So I given the path and also who is the super user. I give Postgres. If you don't give the Postgres over here, it will by default it will take Postgres as the super user here. So I'm just like to get it familiar, I'm going to create. So in the background you can see that the cluster directory is empty. The moment I execute the creation of the cluster creation command, it will create all the files which is required for the operation of the cluster. So let's execute this one. So you can see that like all the base folder or pg wall, and even the configuration file pgsql postgresql.conf and pghbaconf. So all these configuration files, all these files get created. So in the last, it will instruct us to start the cluster. So in the 4 steps which we discussed previously, we have installed the software successfully. Now the creation of the cluster is done using a utility called initdb. Now using pgctl command, we are going to start the cluster. So before starting the cluster, what we have to do is we need to set the port number in the Postgres configuration file. So whenever you start a database, or whenever you when you start a database, the first file which is going to read by the Postgres is this configuration file. So this is like the hash represents the comments. And the file consists of lines in the form of name and a value. If you scroll down, you can see that there are different parameters. We will go in detail about different sections of the configuration file later. If you scroll down further, you can go to port. You have a parameter called port. In order for the parameter to be effectively used by the cluster, you need to uncomment the parameter. So we'll uncomment these two, the listener address. I will talk about listener address later. So I will change these parameters. You can give any value for the port greater than 1024 to 2 to the power of 64. So between these two, you can give any port number. Port number is basically where is the number where Postgres listens to. I will just, for the ease of our remembering, I'm going to give 555 as the port number. So I'm going to save this file and I'm going to close this. So later we'll study about Postgres configuration file. So now we need to see, let's use pgctl command to check the status of the folder. Let's say -d. So new, you can see that the post using pgctl, you can check the status of the cluster. It is not running, so we need to start the cluster. So same thing we can use, instead of status we will give the start command. So you can see that the cluster is started. So once again, check the status. Now you can see that Postgres is started. The moment the Postgres is started, it starts a background process called postmaster. You can see that in the background we have postmaster.pid. This particular file gets created. The moment the server is stopped, this postmaster ID will be disappeared. So now that we started the cluster and check the status of the cluster, let's connect to the cluster. So now that we installation is done, creating the cluster using initdb utility is done. Now the third part, using pgctl, we have started the cluster. Yes, and also we check the status of the cluster. We will stop the cluster later. So let's connect to the cluster. So first I will make use of pgAdmin tool. I will talk about pSQL command during the introduction to pSQL class. But right now we will see how to use pgAdmin to connect to the cluster and create the database and also create the table. So let's do this demo now. If you go to the Postgres, one second. If you scroll down to the section where we installed the Postgres, if you see here, we have pgAdmin tool, which will get installed along with the software. So we used this option to get installed along, different tools or different components along with the software, along with the server. This tool also will get installed. Let's wait for it to start. So this is a GUI based interface to connect to the server. So if you see here, these are the previous installations. Let me remove this. So now we don't have any servers registered here. Let's register this particular server now. So register, if you right click on the server, register server, you can give any name you want. I will give pgdb01. Then you no need to specify anything here. Go to the connections. Since I am connecting to the the server which is running local to the system, I will give localhost. If not, we have to specify the IP address or the host name of the server where the Postgres is running. The port number, I will change it to what I given in Postgres conf, that is 555. Then I will give username as Postgres. I will give the password which I was given when I was installing. If you don't specify the password, you don't need to give anything over here. Let's save it. So if you see here, this is the like databases. We have one database created by default. Postgres will it will create one default database called Postgres. We'll talk about this table space in the upcoming classes. Username, and also it will create a default user called Postgres. Now let's create a database. Like to create a database, you go to the database section, right click, create database, you give the database name. Let's give database as testdb01, and here we need to change the encodings. Let's like it will throw an error if I try to create the database using that, like with all. Let's not change any other parameters right now. Let's simply create a database. This is the script in the background which it is going to use to create the database. Let's save this. See, we are going to get this error because we need to change the template. We'll talk about this template and all later. So we'll go here and change the encoding to win1252. Then we are going to create the database. So if you see here, along with the Postgres database, which was by default, which got created, we have created our own database called testdb01. Now let's connect to this database and create a table. So if you see here in the schemas, under the public schema, we have if you see here, tables. So you are not seeing any tables over here. Let's refresh it. So there is no tables here. Let's create a table by connecting to this database. So I'm going to use query tool. So here you can see that you are connecting to testdb as a Postgres user, and on the server which we mentioned it when we are creating the server connection here. So we are going to create a table. Create table. Let's say employee table we are creating. Username is like, let's create the fields like ID integer, username varchar, then you can give place. Let's run this command. Varchar2, sorry, it's not exist here in this. Yeah, you can see that the table got created. So if you go back to the test DB, look into the test table. If you see here, the table got, earlier it was not there, so now the table EMP got created. Let's insert few records. Let's insert couple of records here now. So let's execute these commands. See, it's a spelling mistake. Insert. Let's change this. So let's execute these commands. So one row got inserted. So like this, let's insert all this. And now in order to see what are the data, which like data present in the EMP table, select star from EMP. If you execute, you can see that the 3 records got created in the database. So what we have done is, using pgAdmin tool, we have connected to the database. Using this tool, we are connected to the database, and then we created the table. We created the database and we created the table, and then we inserted few records, and using the select query, we have seen that like what are the records which got saved in the database. So in the next class, we will use pgCTL tool, as we discussed previously. We will use this tool, pgSQL, pSQL, basically. So if you see here, if you go to, so, and also like like if you see the base directory, here is the table which I will talk about all this, what is VM or what is FSM. All this information I'm going to discuss with you in the upcoming classes. So if you see here, like initdb is used to create the cluster, then we used pgCTL command to start and check the status of the cluster, and we used pSQL to check the, like we will use pSQL to do all these operations, like connecting to the database, creating the table, creating the inserting the records. All these things we will work on this in the upcoming sessions. So for today, we learned all this. So, and the one more last thing is, we will see how we will stop the Postgres cluster. So if you see here, it is still running. We'll stop the cluster. So if you see here, we have server is stopped. As I told before, So the PID process, which I mentioned previously, postmaster ID, it is like it disappeared. So it will get deleted on its own. So when with the moment you start the cluster, let's start the cluster. Like see the PID master postmaster ID. This is the first ID which will get created after reading the Postgres configuration file. We will go in detail with respect to this. So I just want to show you the demo on like what are the background, what will happen in the background when you start the Postgres cluster. So let's stop this cluster again. So first let's see the status. It is running, server is running now. Like you can see this here, server is running with the PID. If you just for the demo purpose, if you double click on this, and if you see this, you can see that like in the server is running PID 13008. You can see that like the same the process ID is mentioned over here, and the cluster directory where the cluster got created, and the cluster port number through which the Postgres listens to. So all this information will be present over here. Now let's close this, and we can see like we can stop this cluster. You can see that like the postmaster ID is gone now. Yeah, that's all. So thank you. So we'll discuss about pSQL in the upcoming sessions, and also like we will discuss about like installing Postgres on Linux. Thank you. So thank you for this.